Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we'll be looking at what the quantum virus is in Marvel Zombies. One of the most disturbing, unsettling, and at the same time fascinating viruses to ever appear in the superhero genre, and within the vast and complex Marvel Cinematic Universe, is undoubtedly the dreaded quantum virus, also known in the saga as the quantum virus. This is not just a simple biological threat. It is a dark force capable of twisting reality itself, an infectious agent that not only brings unimaginable chaos and destruction, but also unleashes a wave of pure horror, transforming millions into ruthless, hungry creatures within an alternate reality of the Marvel Multiverse. A story we saw brought to life in all its brutality and detail in the acclaimed series What If?, which left a lasting mark on the narrative of Marvel Zombies. The quantum virus is, in essence, an advanced form of brain degeneration combined with extreme physical mutation. It does not turn its victims into mere disoriented zombies. It creates conscious predators. These creatures retain part of their intelligence, their deepest memories, and even their special abilities. Yes, you heard that right. Heroes and villains who once protected or ruled the world now become relentless hunters, using those very powers, those that made them legendary, to unleash systematic slaughter. The result is a terrifying blend. The heroic transformed into the grotesque, the epic turned into a living nightmare. In this analysis, we will delve deeply into the nature of this infection. We will explore its origin, its structure, its mode of propagation, the symptoms in those infected, its chilling superhuman abilities, and most importantly, its weaknesses. We will decipher what drives these creatures and what makes them so different from traditional zombies. But first, an important warning. What follows contains significant spoilers for Marvel Zombies and What If. If you haven't seen this series yet, I recommend stopping here and watching it first, because what's coming is intense and disturbing. What If does not just present alternative stories. It opens doors to worlds where small decisions change the fate of an entire universe. And in one of those realities, the quantum virus emerges. It is not just any outbreak, but an entity whose genesis lies in the quantum realm, that mysterious microscopic domain where the laws of physics blur. A place we already know from other Marvel stories, but which in this tale acquires an entirely new threat. The series suggests that the virus is not a conventional biological agent. It is an unknown microscopic life form, possibly even conscious, with a unique capacity to alter the biology and mind of its victims. Thus, what began as an isolated incident becomes an interdimensional apocalypse. It all begins with Janet Van Dyne, who spent decades trapped in the quantum realm. During that time, her body and mind were exposed to unknown conditions, to biological forces that altered her very essence. What happened was not simply a mutation. It was a radical transformation, turning her into something beyond life and death. The quantum virus corrupted her organism until she became a conscious creature trapped between reason and hunger. Decades later, Hank Pym, driven by love and desperation, travels to the quantum realm with the mission to rescue her. But instead of finding his wife, he discovers a living nightmare. Janet, consumed by the infection, attacks him ferociously, marking the beginning of the contagion. Upon returning to the real world, Hank brings with him the seed of calamity. The virus crosses dimensional boundaries, unleashing the apocalypse. Within hours, Scott Lang Ant-Man is unknowingly infected, and although Hope Van Dyne manages to escape, tragedy has already been unleashed. The virus spreads at a terrifying speed. Bites, scratches, fluids, any direct contact is enough to condemn another. The transformation time varies, but it can happen in minutes or hours, depending on the degree of exposure. When the infection reaches the Avengers in San Francisco, what seemed like just another battle becomes an epic slaughter. At a crucial moment, Hank Pym, already reduced in size, manages to bite Captain America, an act that unleashes absolute disaster. One by one, Earth's mightiest heroes fall to the virus. Iron Man, Hawkeye, Black Widow, all transformed into hungry predators. Only one survives, T'Challa, the noble Black Panther, whose fate in this alternate reality becomes a solitary testimony to the catastrophe. The quantum virus does not merely destroy bodies. It destroys ideals. Earth's protectors, those who once swore to defend it, become its fiercest executioners. The line between hero and villain fades, and the multiverse becomes a battlefield where the infection corrupts everything. The story of Marvel Zombies is much more than a zombie tale. It is a reflection on the fragility of morality, destiny, and the nature of power. Despite the absolute cataclysm unleashed by the quantum virus, not all was lost. Amid the smoking ruins of ravaged cities, among muffled screams, and the deadly silence that settled like a grim shroud over the planet, a small but determined group of survivors emerged. They were heroes, no longer as symbols of hope, but as the last guardians of what remained of humanity, resisting the unstoppable tide of living death. Among them were Spider-Man, Hulk, Hope Van Dyne, Wasp, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, Okoye, and T'Challa, the legendary Black Panther. This group not only had to survive in a world devoured by zombies endowed with superhuman abilities, but also carried an even more desperate mission: to find a cure. It was the last spark of hope amid an absolute apocalypse. Every step, every battle, every sacrifice became a narrative pulse charged with tension and drama. Their journey, filled with devastating action scenes and moments of somber reflection, shaped one of the most impactful and memorable episodes of the first season of What If? A chapter that became a turning point for the expansion of the Marvel Zombies universe, giving rise to a new animated series that delves deeper into the darkness of the multiverse. The quantum virus, in essence, is an unprecedented biological threat. It is not merely an infection. It is an agent of total transformation, a microscopic aberration that rewrites the rules of biology. Its contagion is extremely fast, and its spread is almost unstoppable. The pathogen is transmitted through bites, scratches, or direct contact with the fluids of an infected individual, instantly entering the bloodstream. Once inside, the virus initiates a devastating chain reaction, triggering a cytokine storm so intense that it destroys the body's defenses from within. This mechanism is a self-destructive spiral. White blood cells become hyperactive, releasing even more cytokines in an endless loop that ends in total immune failure. The body's own defense system becomes the instrument of its destruction. The virus not only kills, but reprograms the organism. It transforms it, but the infection does not act alone. Pathogenic microorganisms present in the saliva, nails, and decaying skin of zombies act as catalysts for the process, accelerating necrosis and putrefaction. Within minutes, the body collapses, the skin takes on a cold, cadaverous, sickly hue, and the transformation culminates. The victim ceases to exist, replaced by a soulless creature completely dominated by the virus. When initial exposure to the virus is low, the early symptoms can be mistaken for a common illness: high fever, extreme fatigue, tremors, muscle spasms, and palpitations. However, the real danger lies in the virus silently advancing to attack the central nervous system. It destroys neural connections, degrades synapses, and reprograms the mind. What was once human consciousness, memories, and emotions is reduced to a primal void: hunger. From that point on, the infected cease to reason. They lack empathy, pain, or fear. Only one obsessive, irrational drive remains: to devour human flesh. This desire does not respond to a biological need, because they are already dead, but to deep psychological manipulation. The virus creates an insatiable addiction. replacing all rational thought with absolute compulsion. It is need transformed into madness. In massive exposures, the infection is virtually instantaneous. In seconds, body and mind collapse, leaving only the monster. This makes the quantum virus an almost impossible threat to contain. A single bite, the slightest contact, is enough to trigger a devastating chain reaction. Compared to the classic hunger virus of the Marvel Zombies comics, the quantum virus presents disturbing differences. The infected lose most of their intelligence, though they retain fragments of memory and flashes of previous abilities. A zombified Spider-Man or Iron Man, for example, may still use their powers, but they do so erratically, brutally, and distortedly. This makes them even more dangerous predators. Beings without self-control, driven solely by hunger, yet capable of using superhuman abilities, without healing or regeneration factors, as all the organism's energy is consumed in the internal struggle against the virus. These zombies are a terrifying mix. Half human, half corpse, trapped between what they were and what the virus forces them to be. Their hunger is not simply to feed. It is a psychological void imposed by the virus, a perpetual sentence. Visually, they are a living nightmare. Their skin takes on sickly shades between gray, blue, and green. Their eyes turn completely white, empty, like mirrors of their lost humanity. In many cases, their lips disappear, revealing sharp teeth and fragments of skull. Shreds of their heroic costumes, torn, bloodstained, and covered in decay, stand as a brutal reminder that even the greatest heroes can fall. Despite the absolute collapse caused by the outbreak of the quantum virus, not all was lost. Amid a shattered world, engulfed in flames, corpses, and muffled screams, a small but relentless group emerged. Heroes who, against all odds, refused to surrender. They were the last remnants of resistance, the final guardians of a humanity slipping away. Among them were Spider-Man, Hulk, Hope Van Dyne, Wasp, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, Okoye, and T'Challa, the noble Black Panther. This small group did not merely represent the remains of a fallen civilization. They were the last spark of hope on a condemned planet. Their goal was simple, yet colossal: to survive and, if possible, find a cure that would end the plague devouring the earth. Every step they took, every battle they fought, became an act of epic resistance, charged with desperation and heroism. That story, filled with blood, betrayal, and sacrifice, became one of the most memorable episodes of What If. Its impact was so profound that it gave birth to Marvel Zombies, a saga that took the nightmare of the quantum virus to even darker and more disturbing levels, exploring the boundaries of horror in the multiverse. The quantum virus is not simply a disease. It is a sentence of biological and mental death. Its rate of contagion defies all logic. A scratch, a bite, or even a tiny drop of infected saliva is enough to condemn the victim. Once inside, the pathogen travels rapidly through the bloodstream, triggering an apocalyptic immune reaction known as a cytokine storm. This process is a biological self-immolation. The body's defenses mercilessly attack their own tissues, causing total internal destruction. The result is a swift collapse of the body, but the virus does not stop at killing. It transforms. The organism, destroyed from within, becomes the perfect vessel for the virus to continue spreading. Added to this is an even more disturbing element. The saliva, nails, and teeth of the infected are contaminated with bacteria and microorganisms that accelerate decomposition and necrosis. Thus, the process of death and resurrection occurs within minutes, turning the victim into a being driven by uncontrollable hunger. In cases of partial infection, the transformation is slower, but no less lethal. The first symptoms are deceptive: high fever, extreme fatigue, tremors, intense muscle pain, and tachycardia. However, the most terrifying part comes later. The virus penetrates the brain, destroying neural connections, erasing memories, emotions, and consciousness. What remains is a human shell governed by a single impulse: to devour. And the most chilling aspect is that they feel no pain. They walk with dangling entrails, mutilated limbs, or exposed bones without showing any reaction. Some continue moving even after suffering severe mutilations or partial amputations. It is speculated that certain infected may retain fragments of language, but in the series their sounds are reduced to bestial roars, evidence of the virus's absolute control over their minds. Over time, the bodies deteriorate even further, but the will of the virus prevails. They walk, drag rotting limbs, hunt. Zombie Captain America is an extreme example. A walking corpse, almost skeletal, still capable of posing a lethal threat. One of the most terrifying aspects of the quantum virus is its contagion rate, close to 100%. No living being seems capable of resisting it. Humans, superheroes, aliens, even titans such as Thanos, Ebony Maw, and Cull Obsidian fell victim. Contagion can occur indirectly, as in the most disturbing case. Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, manipulating illusions to make her victims believe they are enjoying a feast while devouring rotting flesh. The result is an immediate transformation, accompanied by unbearable pain. The quantum virus not only kills, it reconfigures. It takes absolute control of the organism, transforming it into its source of energy. Quantum zombies no longer need to sleep, drink, or feed like living beings. They remain active even as their tissues collapse. That is why beings like Zombie Captain America can keep moving even when split in two. Although most lose their intelligence, some retain disturbing fragments of consciousness. Zombie Thanos, for example, not only retains his cunning, but learns and adapts, mastering the Infinity Gauntlet. This makes him an unprecedented threat, both conscious and monstrous. The same happens with Hawkeye. Infected, but perfecting his aim to levels impossible in life. Among them all, Wanda Maximoff represents the most chilling case. Unlike other infected, she retains part of her consciousness and emotions, but her mind is corrupted. Convinced that the virus represents a new higher order, she proclaims herself the Red Queen, or Queen of the Dead. She rises as a divine figure of the apocalypse, leading the army of infected toward the total expansion of the virus. Among the few cracks of hope, Vision discovers something fundamental. The Mind Stone emits a frequency capable of altering the behavior of the infected. By manipulating that energy, he manages to calm or repel zombies, and even partially reverse the infection, as with Scott Lang Ant-Man. But Wanda blocks the stone's influence through her magic, making any attempt to contain the outbreak useless. Hulk and Bruce Banner discover their immunity thanks to gamma radiation and cellular resistance. Other methods include decapitation or brain destruction, although bodily deterioration makes even these methods not entirely effective. Technologies, such as those of Melina Romanoff or Hellas spells, can temporarily repel the infection, but Wanda's absolute control over her horde nullifies everything. In a final act of sacrifice, Vision delivers the Mind Stone to Spider-Man, T'Challa, and Scott Lang, allowing them to escape to Wakanda with the hope of finding a definitive cure. But they do not know Wakanda has already fallen. There, zombie Thanos awaits them, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet with all the stones except one. The episode concludes with the voice of the Watcher, Watu, observing in silence, reminding us that the will to survive can become the ultimate condemnation. The future of that reality remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the quantum virus does not stop. Its story is only beginning in the new Marvel Zombies series, where the horror will reach its darkest point.